Are you ready to get started?
Sure.
Okay, could you state your full name, please?
My name is Henry Theodore Friedenberger III.
Well, that sounds very officious. I like that. And do we have your permission to use the content of this interview for the Warrior Next Door podcast?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Henry, I'd like to start off by you telling us a bit more about what you were doing prior to joining the service and what impelled you to join the military.
Okay. Well, I can remember growing up, and my dad was in the Air Force. I kind of wanted to follow suit, but I never wanted to go Air Force. I wanted to do the Marines, obviously, whatever's the hardest. My dad tried to convince me to go to the Air Force, but no, I was convinced to do it the hard way. I guess I was always convinced, like, if somebody tells me I can't do something, then I'm more apt to do it. So that's kind of what drove me. But yeah, I remember watching 9/11 at my friend's house. It was like before school. Went to pick him up, and we just happened to be watching TV that day. And I mean, we never even watched TV, but we saw the first plane hit, and then we thought they were doing a replay when the second plane hit. So I remember where I was when 9/11 happened, and then later on in school, I watched the buildings fall when I was in home, like one of my teachers ed's class, and that right there just kind of solidified my whole plan to join.
Do you remember how old you were when 9/11 occurred?
I was a sophomore or a junior, so 17.
Okay, so you were, not too far from getting out of school and having to decide what you wanted to do. Are you saying that 9/11 played some role in that decision?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And you said it was obvious that you wanted to join the Marine Corps. For our audience, why would that be obvious?
Just because we're the best, the hardest, the longest training, the biggest egos.
Could you talk a little bit more? Could you slide that bottle just a little bit out of the way there? Perfect. Could you talk a little bit more about the training that the Marine Corps receives with respect to other branches?
Okay. Yeah, in the Marine Corps we do 12 weeks of training in boot camp. The other services, I believe the Army is 9 weeks. I think the Navy's 9 weeks, Air Force is 6 weeks, but ours is 12 weeks. And it just depends on if you're East Coast or West Coast. If you're East Coast, we call them, they have to deal with the sand fleas over there. That's what the big deal is. And they call us, if we went to the West Coast, we're Hollywood Marines. So we have mountains to hike. But apparently from everybody that's been to the East Coast, Parris Island, I would much rather deal with mountains than sand fleas.
Fair enough. So how would you describe, where were you living before you joined the Marine Corps? How would you describe the way you grew up?
Okay. I grew up with my dad mostly. My dad had custody of us, and then my mom was she was not present the whole time. She was she had alcohol problems. She homeless. But near the end there, she started to show up again. But yeah, I was living with my dad. I had a scholarship at Otero Junior College for a year. I'd been going to school there. I was on the president's list. I was doing good. But after seeing 9/11, and actually what solidified it, now that I think of it, I remember being on break from a college class and watching the invasion of Baghdad, and I just dropped down and started doing push-ups like right then and there, as I already knew. My cousin wanted me to talk to an Army recruiter, but I entertained him, but I already knew I was going to join the Marines.
So tell us a little bit about the recruitment process and basic training. I mean, tell the uninitiated what it was like to become a Marine.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely a culture shock. Boot camp's a culture shock. Everything that you know, where to do, what to do, where to do it, how to do it, when to do it, all of those things. You get stripped away of pretty much everything, and they build you back up. You can't touch for example, you can't fidget, you can't touch your face. like a lot of recruits coming in. I remember the drill instructors yelling at them because they'd always touch their face. But apparently that's apparently how you get acne. That's what the drill instructors told us. Is that if you're touching your face all the time, your hands are dirty, you're sticking dirty. So it makes sense. But yeah, it was definitely a culture shock. The first month of boot camp in San Diego, we do a lot of drill, PT, rifle manual, learning our weapon. And then the second month we go up to Camp Pendleton. That's where we do our rifle qual. And we do all of our field training up there. And the last month we come back down to MCRD San Diego for the graduation and final drill and all those final inspections.
So I've heard you mention in the book something about yellow footsteps.
Yep.
What are those?
The yellow footsteps. So in the Marine Corps, the yellow footsteps, when you get off the bus, there's a set of yellow there's a whole, like for a whole platoon, set of yellow footprints when you get off the bus. And the Marine Corps is kind of famous for it. Get off the bus and get on my footprints. Yeah.
All right. And so when you were going through basic, was there a part of basic training that was more difficult for you than others?
Yes. I actually didn't have to do the tower because I'm afraid of heights. But just for some reason that day I had gear watch, and I never had to do it. So I was.
So what's a tower? What is that?
It was just on one of the obstacle courses where you got to go to the top of the tower, like one leg at a time, like, you know what I mean. And it was just definitely. I was stressed. I hate heights, so I'm glad that I didn't have to do it.
So you basically lucked out because you were doing something else when that particular training exercise was occurring.
Yeah.
Wow. And was there something in boot camp that came easy for you?
Shooting.
Shooting. Mm-hmm. Were you a shooter before you joined the Corps?
Yeah, I went hunting with my dad here and there. My dad would take me out shooting. More so, when I say shooting, I mean more like rifle versus pistol or shotgun. That's a totally different kind of shooting. With the rifle and being iron sights, no scope. That's the way they taught us. That's where anybody learning to shoot should learn iron sights.
Yeah, I've read that the Marine Corps is famous for their marksmanship programs, for being able to take people from wherever that haven't shot much and turn them into like proficient riflemen.
Yeah.
So did you experience that? Did you feel like the training that they had for the rifle quals and all that were pretty effective?
Absolutely. I think their training is bar none. For example, I know they say women sometimes make some of the best marksmen, and that's because I think a lot of times they don't go into that with bad habits already. They're coachable, and by doing that, they don't have an ego either usually, and so they're able to be molded into exactly how to shoot.
Were there a fair number of women in your boot camp?
And so in the Marine Corps, females all go to the East Coast.
Okay.
Parris Island.
Yep.
And then all the male Marines, if you're west of the Mississippi, you go to MCRD San Diego. And if you're east, you go to Parris Island.
Was your father or family, anyone able to make it to your graduation?
Yeah, my dad did, my aunt, my sister, and her husband.
What was that like?
It was interesting. It was a trip. I know the food, we had In-N-Out after, and after eating all the barracks food for so long, it just went right through you.
You weren't ready for all that salty, fatty civilian food, huh?
No.
And so, in the Marine Corps, when you got done with boot, what happened next?
So, because we graduated on December 5th, right before Christmas, usually they give part of the recruitment process or the whole why the Marine Corps is such a cult, and we're good at what we do is we recruit well. Every Marine that graduates, they have 10 days of boot camp leave. When they leave, they go home, and everybody who's known them, he's walking taller, he's fit, looking sharp, and that's a recruitment tool. But because I graduated December 5th, instead of going back to training on December 15th, they let us take a whole month of recruiter's leave, like recruiter's assistance. So we were helping out the recruiters, but we really didn't do it. We just had to report in and let them know we were alive.
Do you remember what year it was on December 5th?
2003.
2003. Okay. Did you, when boot was done, was there additional training that Marines had to undergo after that? I mean, what was your path through the Corps once you got back from your leave?
Okay, so if you're not, every Marine's a rifleman, so everybody goes through the School of Infantry Marine Combat Training. It's 3 weeks, a 3-week school, and it's just like kind of like a quick synopsis of everything they teach at the School of Infantry, but not as detailed. Like, so any Marine who's going to be a grunt infantry, they have a 0311, that's a rifleman. 0331's a machine gunner. 0341's a mortarman, and they all learn those specific infantry skills in addition to all just infantry techniques and procedures in general.
Is that where you guys, did you do this in boot or did you do it there? Is that where you guys learned like how to deploy your squads, how to deploy the companies? Is that where that happened?
More so there. They did a kind of touched on it in boot camp, but the stress level was so high and like you weren't absorbing that at that point, or you didn't have the camaraderie, like the teamwork with people that you would have follow-on training.
Now that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about that. Once you go to basically advanced infantry training for 3 weeks, you were a Marine at that point. You had the Globe and Anchors.
Yep.
So that must have been like so that it sounds to me what you're saying. I don't want to put words in your mouth. It sounds like you're saying is once you went to training as a Marine, it was a different experience than as a recruit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Because you felt like you were training with your brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As opposed to some guys that might not make it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You might get washed out. Some of them.
Did people wash out?
Yes, they do. Not as high a rate as you would think. But there's one I remember. I can't remember the kid's name. I just remember them calling him the grand old man of MCRD because he'd been there 9 months. Like he got injured, so they just washed him back. They just recycled him back, and until another platoon that's wherever he left off in training, he would pick back up with a different platoon. But that happened probably 5-6 times to him. So he had a year of service by the time he finished boot camp.
Oh my goodness! He came out a Lance Corporal.
Yeah, basically.
Holy cow. So what happens next? So here you are. You're a Marine. You had boot. You've had advanced infantry training. Was there additional training? How did you start to? When did you start to have ideas about what you wanted to do in the Marine Corps?
Okay, so when I joined open contract. You can choose to either have something written in a contract, binding, like you can go any of the jobs, infantry, motor T, intel, any job, you can have that written into your contract. But and I wanted to go infantry, but the fact I would have had to wait like another 6 months to go to boot camp, I needed to leave now when I left. So I was getting in trouble and stuff at college. I needed to leave then, so I went open contract, meaning I let the Marine Corps pick the job for me. And after Marine combat training, when you go back after MCT, they assign you whatever your MOS is.
And what was that for you?
Supply 3043.
And so what does that mean? What were you doing?
Supply administration. That's the job I was going to be learning. And so once you're assigned to your job, your MOS, at that point, they're gonna get you to your school's training, wherever that takes place. And for supply, that's Camp Johnson, North Carolina. So I had to fly back to fly to North Carolina, and then I was on standby for a few weeks for the next class to pick up because it's only a 3-week school for supply.
And so, what did you learn to do for people who hadn't joined the military like myself? When you get trained in supply, what does that mean?
We knew how to basically requisition, order all the end items that a unit would need. We learned like fiscal, base property, pretty much how to supply a battalion, like on a very small scale. There's a lot of things, like how to do the requisitions in the system and the computer. They had a very outdated program. It was like using what am I thinking of? It's like as old as Oregon Trail for sure.
Okay. You talking about the old video game?
Yeah.
So instead of playing Call of Duty, you would have been playing some Atari game.
Yeah.
And so you're saying that the system was a bit antiquated.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And so by the time we actually got to our unit, our first unit, that's where we really learned how to do our job. More so than at school. School is just formal. This is how you do these. These are all the testing. You get tested on all these things, but you don't actually know that job until you go to do it and learn it.
So, this interview is being conducted early in 2023. There's a war going on in Ukraine. And one of the things that you hear a lot are people saying that amateurs talk about tactics and experts talk about logistics. Would supply have fallen under that logistics umbrella? That whole thing where if you can't feed and take care of your army, then it's worthless?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have an appreciation for that when you were doing that job?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this would have been around
2004.
Okay. What was going on in the world in 2004? What was
Well,
the bigger picture?
The Marines were just invading Iraq. They're going back to Fallujah, I think, that was in the big Fallujah. March to Fallujah was.
And so what was the next sort of experience that you had in the Corps?
So after supply school, I finished March or April of 2004. Then I got orders to my first duty station, which was Okinawa, Japan.
Oh.
So I had a year tour over there.
And what was that like?
It was definitely different. Culture, not really, I guess, culture shock in a way. It was interesting to see the world because I got to go to Thailand, Philippines, and then just how the Japanese people are with everything. They're very organized. Like they would strike and they would be in suits and like when they would go on strike, they were in suits and stuff. Not like us, just waving stuff around and
throwing Molotov cocktails.
Yeah, and they're just very organized, neat, clean, smart people.
So it sounds like you have a very favorable impression of them.
Yeah.
On Okinawa, of course, that was an island, one of the Japanese home islands that was invaded in World War II. The Marine Corps did that, lost a lot of lives. Did the Marine Corps constantly remind the soldiers about their history, about the sort of things that they were doing? What I'm trying to say is, did they develop an esprit de corps by making sure that every Marine understood what they did in the past?
Absolutely.
Okay. Did that happen like in Okinawa? Did you understand that element of it when you were there?
Yeah, we even had a little tour they took us on. I mean, if you wanted to do it, and you can see like shrapnel in the caves where the Japanese who refused to give up, they'd rather commit suicide than die, and they would pull their grenade, and you can still see the shrapnel in the caves where their last stand was. And just some of the battles, like taking us to the land, and like this, it's super humid over there.
Yeah. So, was it good duty? Do you think that did the Japanese people treat the GI or the Marines well?
Yeah, for me.
Yeah.
I know that there was protests and strikes, and that's more down towards like Gate 2. I was on Camp Courtney, which is like halfway up the island. There's quite a few camps on the island, and Air Force Base, Kadena, and Camp Butler. That's the big one down there.
That's all. When you were transferred to Okinawa, how did they bring you over? Did they fly you over? Did you get to go on a ship? What did you end up doing?
Yeah, we flew over. So I think I got to go on. I got a lot of leave in the beginning because I got that first set of leave. Then I went from MCT out in California to Camp Johnson in North Carolina. Then I got another. Since I was going to Japan for a year, they let me take more leave prior to going. So I went back to Colorado before heading out to LA, and then I flew from LAX. It was 13 hours, something like that. Horrible plane ride, just because I was in the middle next to a big old guy, and I couldn't get out of the seat, and it was not a good plane ride.
Sounds like it was memorable though.
Yeah.
So you did a year, it sounds like, in Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
What was your next assignment?
I got orders to MCTISA, which is Marine Corps Tactical System Support Activity. It's on Camp Pendleton, California. They do a lot of training. They test equipment on that side of the house, but it's a non-deployable unit. And I didn't get to choose whether I got to deploy or not. But when I got orders, I had put that in my wish list. Like, I wanted to deploy. That's why I joined. I wanted to go to Iraq. That's when Iraq was really popping off still. And so when I got there, I found out it was non-deployable. I was kind of bummed, but that was basically going to be it for the rest of my enlistment. The next two and a half years and change, that would have been it if I hadn't stayed in.
So what sort of things were you doing on this deployment? You said you were testing equipment?
We were just supply, honestly, over there. We would requisition items. We would do multicultural days because there was, the compound was like half civilians.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, like even it's weird because like at a normal unit, different sections, those would be filled by a Marines officer and enlisted, and some of these billets were filled by civilians, contractors, which is a little difficult. Like it's not a normal Marine Corps unit, that's for sure.
Interesting. And then you just mentioned that you did that until your first enlistment period was up.
Yep.
And then, so talk about that. Your enlistment period's going up. You have a decision to make. What did you do?
At the time, I just went through my first divorce, and I was gonna get out. I didn't know what I was gonna do, but I wasn't gonna stay in. I didn't like supply. So then I got a hold of the career planner, got a hold of me, and that's like a used car salesman, basically. He's a recruiter, but for the Marine Corps, and he convinced me. I was gonna go drill instructor. I decided not to do that. I was gonna go stay supply and get orders to MARSOC, Special Operations Unit, or I can lat move to career planner and change jobs entirely. But if I lateral moved, I lose the preference of duty station, so I don't get to pick where I want to go. And also because I'm lateral moving into an independent MOS like that, it would require that I probably deploy right away, and I was aware of that. So I was excited when I re-enlisted and lat moved. I knew I was going to a deployable unit, and I thought I was excited.
So what happened?
So I went to the next unit I went to was a deployable unit. So it was a deployable unit, but we were the MU squadron, the Marine Expeditionary Unit squadron. So we would attach all these groups of Marines to each different MU. But as a whole, our unit did not deploy as a whole. So we were the MU squadron. We supported all the MUs. So myself, commanding officer, the sergeant major, all the senior enlisted guys, or the permanent personnel, we didn't deploy with the unit. We had to stay back. So it was another two and a half years before I get to another unit to deploy.
So not quite what you anticipated, it sounds like. Yeah. How did you keep your morale up? What did you do during this period when you were a little disappointed?
That's a good question. I got involved in network marketing on the outside, like part-time, selling prepaid legal insurance and identity theft protection. So I got involved with that. I would go to seminars and different trainings. That's what I spent most of my time doing.
So basically, it sounds like what you're telling me is instead of just kind of being pissed all the time, you just found other ways to try to be successful.
Yes.
Okay.
And I ramped up my workouts too. I think that's when I first, when I was at the Cobra and Huey Squadron, HMLA 267, when I was there, I ran my first marathon in 2009. Yeah, the Rock and Roll Marathon, 3 hours and 55 minutes. It was the first long run I've done. And I was challenged to do that partially because my friend Obam, we used to train together. He was a Marine. And one day we ran, I think we were up to 12 miles and my legs just cramped up like completely. Like I can walk faster than I could run. And he was running backwards, just giving me shit the whole time. Like, he said, come on. and he just inspired me to train for a marathon, so I did, and had no problems on that first one.
Awesome. Well, I mean, yeah, you say that's a long run. Yeah, marathons are, I mean, longer than I've ever run continuously. So,
You start to question why you did it.
yeah, I could see where that would happen. It's like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes the answer is because I can, or because I want to, or because I need to. Maybe in your case,
Yeah.
you needed to do something like that. So talk a bit more about what happened. You said you were in that position for a couple of years,
Yes.
and then what happened?
So I stayed at HMLA 267 there. I think it was 2 years, probably, doing a lot of re-enlistments. That was my job, basically, to re-enlist the Marines, to conduct all the interviews for all the enlisted Marines that are coming up on getting out. I have to interview them, make sure they're prepared to go to a separations class. That's a week long. Make sure that they had that completed because it's required by Congress. And then 2009, I wanted to try out for MARSOC, Marine Special Operations, and I did that. I went to selection in 2009, right after the marathon.
So tell me a bit more about MARSOC. What is that?
MARSOC is Marine Special Operations Command. Basically, I think 2006, don't quote me on that, somewhere around there, 2005 or 6 is when they officially became a unit. But essentially they are to the Marine Corps what the Green Berets are to the Army, the PJs are to the Air Force, SEALs are to the Navy. So there's a Marine Reconnaissance, which is our Tier 2 guys. They're like similar to Army Rangers, so like an advanced infantry unit. But then there's the higher Tier 1, that's MARSOC, Marine Special Operations. So their 0372 is their MOS. They all learn similar skills, but the difference between MARSOC and Green Berets are assigned, like one of them will be an engineer, one of them will be a medic. Like that's their official MOS, in addition to being special forces. So they go through like a long course. If you're a medic, you go through like a 14-month course, I believe. They work on goats and do all kinds of things. But in the Marine Corps, it's only a 7-month qualification course to get that MOS, and they don't learn. They have follow-on courses they can go to, but they don't have a specific like engineer. They're just an operator, but they do learn all those different. So there's a little bit of difference, and we're still young in comparison to special forces as a whole. But like from what I've heard and what I've seen is they've adapted very quickly, like caught up to speed with all the other units.
So were you accepted to go do
No,
that?
I didn't know. I did not get accepted.
Okay.
I didn't make it.
So what happened as you went to there, and just take us through what
Okay.
happened?
So we're not allowed to talk about exactly what happens there
Yep.
because of the non-disclosure statement. But it was definitely I should have trained harder preparing for it. It was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. And they did. I think it was a 10-day. They did a 10-day course, and they never did the 10-day again because the attrition was so high. But I mean, the attrition was all still pretty high, like less than 20%, I think, of people who went there and tried would get selected. But they really combined those 10 days, and you do. I can talk about some of it, but the group, the team days are the hardest. Like it's like 03 in the morning, and you start from one event. One person's named a platoon leader. The other person can have an assistant patrol leader. You have an event, certain things that you have to move, whatever the situation is. You have to think on your feet, and you have to come up with a plan to be able to execute that plan. And you can't change that plan for a certain amount of, like, I think, a click into the movement. Like then you can accept advice from other people because you probably had a horrible idea. But yeah, selection was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. I wish I would have trained a little harder for it, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I did just a little bit of research on that before our interview today, and it to me it looked like a Navy SEAL training program. I mean, it just seemed like
Yep.
it was like buds.
Yep.
You know, and I don't know if the dropout rate is in buds, but it's more than 50%. So, at any rate, what does the Marine Corps do now that you attempted to do this very difficult thing, and then now you're going to do something else?
Right. So I went as a career planner. I was still in my primary job because they were so critically needed. They let anybody try out from any MOS. Now they were already telling me even if I did get accepted, that my monitors would not release me anyways.
Oh,
But I don't know. We don't know we won't know. We would never know if that was true unless I had passed.
right.
Because I think they were more critical. They needed operators more.
And this was around 2009, you said?
2009.
So is this a period of time when we were doing everything we can to keep people in the
Plus up,
military?
yeah.
Got it. Okay. So that was one of the reasons why it sounded like maybe they were, you had fewer, how do I put this? It would have been difficult for them to let you do what you were doing because you were trying to bring people in and keep them in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And so when I got back from selection, I had already had orders to go to a new unit, still doing my job as a career planner. I had orders to 2nd Recon Battalion, which is in North Carolina. But when I got back, it was weird. I just had one day I checked the orders and there was a modification to it. And it said 2nd Marine Special Operations Battalion instead of 2nd Recon Battalion, which is basically what Recon used to be. All the 4th Recon guys, they ended up going to MARSOC. So like the unit I would go to was Recon anyways, basically, but it's now falls under the MARSOC command. But yeah, I got orders and I left at the end of November to North Carolina, drove across the whole country with my ex-wife, pregnant, and a 6-week-old pit bull. It was a nightmare.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, it was harder that or the MARSOC thing that you had to do.
Right.
So did I hear you right? Were you basically assigned to go to Special Operations Forces?
Yes.
Okay, and that was in San Diego?
No, that's in North Carolina.
Okay, so you were on the West Coast, you were traveling over to North Carolina then?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was that like? What were those experiences?
Going to MARSOC was probably one of the biggest, as far as in the military culture shocks that it could have, because it's more like big boy rules. A lot of them are cocky. They have like a lot of times first sergeants or senior enlisted had a hard time with them because they didn't have proper haircuts or they wear their uniform however they want. So there's a stigma that goes with that. But honestly, phenomenal guys. Like every single one of them was good at what they did. Like they think selection does a really good job because they know they pick guys that think outside of the box, like to get the job done, not to just do what he says because he's first sergeant and we don't want to get in trouble. Like, no, we're going to do whatever it takes. And if that requires thinking outside the box, then we'll do it.
I imagine that unit was pretty active at this time?
Yeah.
Because of what was going on in the Middle East?
Yeah, so 2nd MSOB, they were on a constant, 2nd MSOB is in North Carolina, 1st MSOB is in California. And they were on a constant rotation. So we would have one company deployed to Afghanistan, and as soon as that company was coming back, 1st MSOB was sending a company to replace them. And this was a constant flux. Like, actually both, yeah, we would have one company downrange all the time, and so did they. So there was a constant.
So what was your role in this unit? What were you doing there?
Same thing, career planner. But I was also a career planner for Marine Special Operations Schoolhouse for all the guys that were just selected from selection, and now they have to go through the ITC, individual training course, to become a MARSOC operator. That was just selection. So then there's a school. And in order to go to that school, they were supposed to have 23 months of obligated service. So a lot of these guys come in needed extensions, like they didn't have near enough time to complete the course. So I was the career planner for 2nd MSOB and the schoolhouse at the same time. So extremely busy running back and forth and processing like 40 extension packages for all these guys that are just coming in to train.
So let's unpack that a bit. So you've been a career planner now for a while. So what was the career planner's role? What were you guys supposed to do for the war fighters and the soldiers, the other Marines?
So our basic job is we still do all the interviews, re-enlistments,
Okay.
retention.
Okay.
We're the primary retention officer between the primary liaison between the commanding officer and headquarters Marine Corps. So, and then putting people in the right places too. Like if we had a guy that didn't like what he was doing, but he's highly qualified to do something else like counter intel, then we would screen him for that and try to get him to do that.
Were you guys successful generally?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got put up for Career Planner of the Year a couple of times. I didn't win Marine Corps wide, but I did get put up twice while I was at MARSOC, and then twice when I was at the wing unit before that.
What was when you were trying to convince someone to stay in the Marine Corps, what sort of things, did you find something that worked better than others?
Definitely not the benefit tags. That's what recruiters use. They tell you to pick travel and adventure.
Okay, so
discipline.
That didn't work.
No.
Okay, what?
Because those already got used on them when they joined the Marine Corps. So they already knew that they got sold.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Honestly, just talking to them, just getting to know them, what they wanted to do. A lot of guys, divorce rate is high in the military in general. But a lot of guys wanted another challenge. So being at MARSOC, they got that opportunity. Because even if they were just in their MOS, their primary MOS, they were still support for a special operations unit.
Yep.
So we got to do training and see things that other units never get to do, because the funding is pretty much unlimited over there.
What were the sort of MOSs that there was high demand for, that you were trying to keep above all others?
So EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, definitely. You got to be crazy to do that.
Amen.
Yeah, you got some balls.
Yeah.
Some good dudes though.
Yeah.
So EOD, counter intel, 0211, and that's another one. In the Marine Corps, our counterintelligence is also human. The Army, I think, splits it up into human intelligence and counterintelligence, but our counterintel guys do both, pretty much. Interrogating guys on the ground, like in prisoners of war, that's their job. They do all that stuff. Who else? EOD, JTACs, Joint Terminal Air Controller, basically warheads and foreheads, guys calling in airstrikes. Those were important to retain. And then SOX C, Special Operations Capability C is communications. So comm guys, like basically you're a radio operator, but with all the special MARSOC gear. So they have different gear they get trained up on.
So would this be like for like advanced long range communications? Like you're way out in the field, you need to be able to tell people what's going on back at the base?
Yeah.
That sort of thing?
Yeah.
Like satellite phones?
Using crypto.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So how long did you do that before you transitioned into something else?
So I stayed at MARSOC from 2009 to 2013 with one deployment to Afghanistan with them.
What was that like?
It was interesting. Well, before I deployed, you had to do SEER. Everybody at MARSOC has to do SEER school if you want to deploy.
What is SEER school?
SEER school is survival, evasion, resistance, escape.
Okay.
And basically, the only people who have to do that are pilots or special operations units.
So you had to do that because you were part of that unit?
Yeah, in order to deploy. And it was the best training I've done, like bar none. It's 3 weeks. You get slapped around a lot. There's a non-disclosure statement too, and I can't explain everything, but you get starved, beat up, and it was the best training ever.
Spoken like a true Marine. Best training ever. They beat me up and starved me.
It was awesome.
And so then once you got into Afghanistan, can you tell me where you were stationed or what you were doing there? Or
Yeah.
what your role was?
When we first got in there, we were SOTF West, Special Operations Task Force West. We were based out of Herat, Afghanistan. But the way the Special Operations Unit works, like we have VSPs, Village Stability Platforms, And it's basically like a little outpost, a little village. So like one Green Beret team in ODA could be down here in Khaki Safed, and they've been deployed back and forth. Like one guy who was there, he'd been deployed I think 7 times there. So he knows these people. Like he's worked and he's built a relationship with these people. Their job is to train the ANA and the commandos, the Afghan National Army, and then they have their special forces, their commandos. That our job is to train them so they can support themselves.
Did you get the sense that the Marine Corps' model for working with the local population was effective?
At MARSOC, yes, I believe so. The biggest problem with that was the insider threats. Guys who have been vetted, they're supposed to have been vetted, but they end up opening up on our guys that are like on a base. They could have just gone. It's like in Sergeant Math, they take one out and you just recruited 3 more possibly. Like if you guys went out on a patrol and they took one guy out, who knows, you might have recruited his cousin, his brother, and whoever else.
What sort of memories do you have of your time in Afghanistan in terms of the base, the locals, what you were doing? What sticks out after all this time?
That's the pretty fond memories, honestly. Good people, good times. My friend Kenny, everybody. It's just it was really stressful, but at the same time, it was like some of my best memories, looking back, fondest memories.
Were when you were deployed?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Was it, I don't want to ask a leading question, but it begs to ask, was it because you were able to put your training to work, like in the field?
And you knew you were doing something that mattered.
Yeah. Did you have a chance to interact much with the local population?
A little bit. Actually, it's a pretty funny story. We had they have guys that sell stuff like rugs and diamonds, but who knows what they really are. But we had this one guy that they called him Halfgan because he worked in the gym, but I mean he was half because he was a big dude, but he was just little. He was short but just swole. And there was that guy. He used to work at the gym, and man, he had his body odor was horrendous. Like you could just walk by and smell it. And I remember one of my junior Marines. There was that guy, and then there was another Afghan guy who had the biggest head, like from the Oddity. I don't know if you ever seen. He had this big old head, and I remember one of my junior Marines was trying to get these 2 guys to brawl. Trying to set it up, talking crap about the other one. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Did they ever brawl?
No, they didn't. But I'm pretty sure Afghan would have took him.
So was Afghan a Marine?
No.
So he's a local guy
yeah.
that was just built but short.
Yeah. They had civilians that would work on the base.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you have any security issues when you were there? Did you notice, were you lobbing mortars at the base? Was it pretty quiet at that time? What was that like?
So we were at Camp Lawton, like I said, Herat, and I guess, so this was 2012, September through May of 13 is when we were there. And so I guess a lot of the fighting had already taken place where we were at least when we were there. But there was a couple times we got mortared. I remember one time we were at the gym. It was like midnight, and me and my friend Kenny were at the gym and doing a back workout, and we started hearing the mortars come in, and then the sirens to notify everybody to seek cover. And I look up, and Stevens is gone. He's like, "Man, what are you doing?" Because I switched sides and was doing the other side of my back. He's like, "What's wrong with you, man?" And I was like, "Dude, I mean, honestly, like if it's gonna hit us, it's gonna hit us. Dude, there's nothing you can do."
Yeah.
He's just like, "What the fuck's wrong?" I was like, "I can't finish one side, man. I got to the other side."
Oh my goodness. What were the base facilities like?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because being with the Special Operations Unit, the food, we had 4 meals a day, steak and lobster on Sundays.
Oh man, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. The big 54-gram Mileplex, just as many as we wanted, the protein shakes. So you can get there and get big real quick.
So it sounds like with all the time you guys had to work out, the food you ate, you had a bunch of really burly dudes out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember Sergeant Major said one time, and he was kind of giving me shit like as if I was doing steroids, but there was I guess he was a real funny guy. He said he'd been to one of the VSPs. He said, I walk around and see all these guys all big, but no damn weights. You know, like he's fucking needles everywhere. So these guys are getting jacked in Afghanistan. They don't even have a gym, some of them.
So basically we said, what the hell's going on? Everyone's taking performance enhancing drugs out here.
Yeah. He's like, ain't that right, Friedenberger? And I go, yeah.
Needle sticking on your arm.
Because I got big quick, like, and I just from eating, sleeping, and eating 4 times a day, you get big quick and proper sleep.
Yeah, you can, no doubt about it. When you transitioned out of Afghanistan, what did they have you doing when your deployment there ended?
As my deployment ended, we transitioned, so the SOTF coming to take over for us was going to be Army Command. So we moved from Camp Lawton to Leatherneck, Camp Cop, another camp on MARSOC camp on top of Leatherneck, on Leatherneck. But we had to move there before the deployment was over. So the last 2 months we spent down at Leatherneck, and then it was kind of, we got back. I had already had orders to my next unit, which is 2nd Battalion 1st Marines, an infantry unit. So I knew I was going to be going from a deployment to a unit that's getting ready to deploy.
Okay.
So it was going to be a pretty stressful transition, but because I volunteered to go on the deployment, and I did like exceptional, I guess, on my job while I was there, the executive officer asked me if I wanted to go to jump school before I left. So I got to go to Fort Benning. I got to go to Fort Benning, Georgia for in August of 2013 for jump school.
Well, that's a very storied place in terms of jump school. I think the 101st and 82nd trained there.
Yep.
So what was jump school like?
That was fun.
Okay.
Lots of games, fun and games.
How many jumps did you have to do to get qualified?
5.
5 jumps? Okay.
Mm-hmm. I remember my friend Chris, he was a JTAC. He ended up taking his life, but his twin brother was a Green Beret, and I became friends with him, Mike. And when I was at jump school, I think it was the first weekend or the second weekend, I was a staff sergeant at the time. We weren't supposed to stay in hotels over the weekend, but we weren't junior guys either, so we just did it anyways. And I remember talking to my friend Mike on the phone, Goski, the Green Beret, and he was giving me because I was nervous. I was scared to jump out of planes, and he was just like, man, he's like, I snuck into the Army when I was 10 years old and did my first jump into howling winds. And he's like, here, I'm gonna send you a clip. And it was YouTube, and it was zoom, 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 what a hell of a way to die. And it talks about it's a cadence. It talks about all the different things that can go wrong with your parachute, and you ain't gonna jump no more.
Oh my gosh. Now, and let me backtrack a little bit. So you were happy that you didn't have to jump out or do the tower in boot, but yet you were okay with jumping out of an airplane.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I know. I figured the best way to face my fears is to do it.
Okay. And so what was the first jump like?
I was first out the door because I was a staff sergeant. I was at it's an Army school, so they already don't like Marines as it is. And I was bigger. I was like probably 200. So since I'm bigger, they put me at the front of the stick. And I was just sitting there waiting, watching the red light. And that's the longest from red to green light ever. It was longer. It felt like longer than a minute, but just standing there waiting, and then green light, slap you on the ass and go. And just don't hesitate.
So you got a little bit of a boost then.
Well, you're standing you're getting ready to pass off your zip line, whatever, and as you hand it off, you're gonna turn out the window, and he just smack you up.
Okay. And then once you got out, what was that like?
I was
I mean, when you went out of the plane, you jumped out of the plane. What was that like?
just a rush.
Was it?
And we do the counting at jump school. You count to 4, like simulating that you jumped out of the plane and you're checking your canopy. You're checking to see if your chute deployed. And there's a reason for that. It's because you forget to count. Yeah, in the middle of that, you forget. Like I don't think I ever counted once. I was like, thank God they opened up. I mean, you forget. At least I did.
Right.
My first jump was good. I think it was the second or third jump that I had to actually execute one of the. It's so like if somebody takes your wind, your chute will close up. Now you have to run on top of their chute until yours opens back up. Someone took you're supposed to have the right of way. And someone took the air, and I ended up running on this other kid's parachute.
So you tell me this happened to you?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some more. What do you mean by someone taking your air?
So if someone goes underneath you,
yep,
and they take your air, your chute closes up, and now you're on top of them.
So you were literally walking on their chute,
like running up
their billowed chute.
Yeah.
And you had to run,
yelling at them.
So you had to run over this shoe, until you could get air.
Yours will open back up.
Okay. So how scared were you?
Scared.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. I was yelling at him. Wait till we get to ground.
Okay. So when you hit the ground, did you find the guy? I mean, what does that look like?
No, I couldn't. Honestly, I didn't find him. And I think I was supposed to do you're supposed to do 5 points of contact, like your feet, calves, you do this whole 5 points of contact, but it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it's more like feet, ass, head. Boom.
Right.
And you hit hard.
Yeah.
And then you have to quickly detach because you start getting dragged by your chute.
Wow.
It was fun.
Whew, I don't know if I'd call that fun, but I'm glad we got people like you in the service who do. And so after jump school, it sounds like that was something you were doing on the way to, was it the 1st Infantry, the 1st Marine Division?
Mm-hmm.
And you said they were getting ready to deploy. And so what was that experience like when you went there? What was your role? What did you have to do?
I was the career planner again as well. This time about 3 times more Marines, because of the infantry unit. At infantry battalion, there's a lot more Marines than there is at MARSOC, because of the special training anyways.
Was a battalion have like 1,000 men or something like that? Is that about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a gap. There was no career planner for 4 months. So there was already that issue. The packages were behind. People hadn't re-enlisted, bonuses, all this stuff, that interviews weren't done. And then we had a commanding general inspection as part of the workup anyway. So like they're part of the CGIP is they go in and inspect all the different sections. Like everything has to be on, like, per the book, and nothing was for me. So like luckily I got a little bit of extra time, and I would stay at work to catch up on everything, but I would pretty much sleep there. Like I got orders to the West Coast, requesting West Coast so I could be closer to my kids. So my ex-wife left while I was deployed. She got pregnant with another Marine's kid, and she went back to the West Coast. So I got orders to be closer to my kids, but because of the upcoming deployment and all this, I didn't really have time to be a dad anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long did you do that? Did you deploy with them?
Yes.
And so that would have been your second deployment?
Yep.
And so what was that like? Where'd you guys go?
We were on the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit. So we're on ship.
Oh. What was that like? What was the name of the ship?
Macon Island. I was on the USS Macon Island.
Okay, big assault amphib ship, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
We did a half a marathon on the ship. We did a battalion hike, which is literally all of us in a. It was retarded.
How do you hike on a ship? What did you do?
You just go in circles with all your weapons and everything. It looked like, it was bad.
So are they just trying to keep you guys in shape?
Yeah.
And how long did it take for you guys to steam from?
So when we first left Camp Pendleton or San Diego, we stopped in Hawaii. There were some storm people that needed to be rescued, I guess, for some tropical storms that were going. We had to go back and get these guys. Then we ended up in Hong Kong. That was our first port. Hong Kong was awesome.
So before we talk about Hong Kong, when you were aboard ship, it wasn't just your ship, right? Were you part of a fleet?
It's part of a fleet.
What did that look like when you looked out in the ocean?
You were rarely close enough to see the other ships.
So it felt like you were the only ship out there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Except when you see I think it's the merchant marines that come and do the refueling and and then I ended up flying from Macon Island over to the USS Comstock, which is the real small one. One of our companies was over there, and I had to do their interviews and take care of their Marines. But I ended up flying over to the Comstock and getting stuck over there. We ended up, because they went one way, we ended up in Bahrain, Djibouti, Camp Lemonnier, and
was this after Hong Kong?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to that first.
My bad.
No worries. So we're because I was like, man, if you were in Bahrain from there, that is a thing. So on the ship, when you first saw the ship and deployed, is that something that Marines are excited about?
Yeah. I mean, ship life sucks though.
Why?
Food, unless you're a chief, E7 or above. Yeah. Just to eat chow every single meal, that's probably for the younger Marines horrible for them, because it's like I would say a minimum of 1 to 2 hours per meal waiting.
Really?
Just waiting.
Oh.
But as E6, I was a staff sergeant, so we would the Navy and Marines, we would put like one of us in, we'd cut in front of them. You know what I mean?
You're right, because you were higher
Higher
rank. Was it because the ship had
so many people?
Yeah, was that normal that they
Yeah.
have to wait that long? That's just part of being on board a ship?
And
Okay.
the food sucked. You always knew something bad was going to happen if you got fed good.
Okay,
Yeah.
so apparently that's something that has not changed historically. I've heard World War II veterans tell me the same thing. Yeah. Okay, so you go into Hong Kong. What was that like, port of call?
Oh, man, it's crazy. Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't get in trouble. As much as I used to drink back then, I don't drink anymore, but I used to drink a lot. I think all Marines drink a lot. We were founded in a bar.
Yeah, so I saw that in your book. We're going to talk about it a little bit. Could you relay that story?
Yeah, that we were born in a barn?
Yeah.
Bar. We were born in a bar. Captain Samuel Nicholas, he's the first Marine Corps recruiter. I can imagine it went something like, hey, you guys want to mess these guys up? You got a bunch of drunk guys together, and that was the first Continental Marines.
All right, and it just grew into the force it is today. So you were in Hong Kong. You were still partaking in drink back then. What kind of things did you enjoy while you were in Hong Kong?
Lots of craziness. I couldn't, for the life of me, I couldn't figure out how to get out of my. I couldn't figure out how to turn the air conditioning off in my hotel room, and I'd been in there drinking for however long. And my gunny comes in, and he's like, "Man, it's like a dungeon in here. It's hot. It's just sweating. There's all kinds of stuff everywhere." He was just like, "Man, this is crazy."
So it sounds like you guys basically got a hotel and a bunch of alcohol. And just drank a lot and hung out. What were the people like in Hong Kong? What were the bars like? What did you see there?
I don't think the people liked us that much. I don't know why.
Hard to imagine.
There's these huge American people running around. I remember, I think ATM machine ate my card one time, because you get on ship, and if you're on a new country, sometimes your bank will run like a fraud, thinking it's fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And so it ate my card, and I was out here just yelling at full blast at this ATM machine. And all these people were just looking at me like I'm like,
barbaric Americans.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Hong Kong's interesting because it was kind of an independent state for a while, and then it got pulled back into the China umbrella. So when you were there, outside of the Marines drinking and beating up ATMs, was there? I mean, was there a pretty good relationship between you guys and the average Hong Kong person?
Yeah, I would say so. I personally didn't have too much interaction. I'll take that back. We did have one international incident of staff sergeant who he says he got his drink was spiked, but all I know is I saw him on ship and he was beat up, like the cops beat the shit out of him.
Really?
Yeah. They must really know kung fu or something, because he had a big old shiner, and then I heard after that he got flown back to stateside and kicked out.
Okay, so apparently...
So he caused some kind of international incident. Whatever he did,
yeah, was enough they ran him off.
Yeah.
I can Google that later. I bet you it's on Google.
Probably.
All right, so after Hong Kong, where'd you guys steam to next?
We went to Singapore. Well, I mean, we were at sea for a long time, but the next port was Singapore. That was fun.
Okay, what was that like?
Same.
Yeah.
A lot of partying. Expensive. Singapore was expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had quite a few good times there. Again, I don't know how some of these. We had a Marine. What did he do? They'd secured drinking, and oh no, this is later on. Yeah, later on when we were at a port, this Marine, he was already not supposed to drink, but he snuck off the ship to drink because we were drinking on just the beach, and then he snuck back on the ship drunk, trying to check in after he's already wasted, and they're like, it's obviously they're just watching him walk up and do this. And I mean, I think he had jumped off. He jumped off to get off the ship.
He jumped off the ship.
Yeah, to go drink.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Singapore was a blast though. Expensive.
So this reminds me of a saying that I read recently about the Marine Corps, that if you lock a bunch of Marines up in a room with a 1-ton steel block, they will either destroy it, steal it, or get it pregnant.
Or all three.
Or all three.
Hell yeah.
It sounds like from your experience in the port of calls, it sounds like a little bit of that may have happened.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my gosh.
There was a Marine got locked in Singapore. I guess they call it, its nickname is 4 Floors of Horrors, but it's apparently it's brothels. And this Marine got locked into one. He didn't know, like, once you're in there, like, you have to pay or leave.
Oh.
Or you have to pay in order to leave, and he kicked the door in. He got arrested too.
So you had to break out?
He broke out, yeah.
Of the 4 Floors of Horrors.
Yeah.
There ought to be a commendation for that.
Yeah.
Like a patch.
I remember it, NCO. I don't know if I should say all that.
You can say whatever you feel comfortable saying. It's up to you.
I'm good, I'll pass on.
Okay, fair enough. So when you guys left Singapore, is that when it was the next port of call, like the Middle East, or?
Yeah. Okay. So the next one would have been, that's during the time that I flew from one ship to the other and got stuck.
So talk about that.
So my cousin was with Echo Company. Echo Company was on Comstock, USS Comstock. It's one of the older, smaller ships. You can really feel the rock and roll on that one. Shitty, but I flew over there to take care of all those Marines. And my first sergeant over there, I really liked the first sergeant. He always took care of me. Got me the Marines I needed to see. So I ended up staying over there. I ended up getting stuck because I think the Macon Island, whatever reason, they had to keep going.
Oh, so your ship that you flew from had to flare away.
Yeah, because the Echo Company was going to do some training in either Bahrain or somewhere over there.
And so how long were you away from your ship, the Macon Island?
Like a month.
And
the Sergeant Major was pissed.
Yeah.
And I was getting put in for a Career Plan of the Year award, and I just remember him saying, something about he's gonna reel me in. You better reel in this. I'll reel you in. Staff sergeant, think you do what you want to do. He's giving me a hard time because I was helping the Marines out over there. Like I did what I wanted pretty much.
Right. So as the career planner, when you talked about earlier, and it sounds like this may have happened on the Comstock, there's men who aren't caught up. They're not up to date. Is that important to them to be able to meet with you?
Absolutely.
Right. It sounds to me like something that they give a crap about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's by order. It's supposed to happen. Like,
Right.
Does it all the time? Probably not, just because we're so understaffed. Or they'll just do briefs, like fill the room with Marines and do a brief instead of individual. It's supposed to be an individual interview with each one of them, and not only that, career planner in that Marine, but also when it's an EAS interview, meaning they're close to their end of active service, the commanding officer is also supposed to interview the Marine after I do.
When you mean interview them, are you talking? Is this like an evaluation where you're telling them?
It's one of two. Like, it depends on the Marine. Like if you do the interview, the Marine wants to re-enlist, then I'm not even going to schedule the CO's interview because the Marine already wants to re-enlist. Now, but say he wants to lat move and do something else to counter intel, I got to go through all the prerequisites to make sure that he meets those. And whatever ones he doesn't, he has to go get documentation saying like I'm eligible for a top secret clearance or whatever. And we have to provide all that documentation to the command when we route it up for signature.
I mean, because I think when a lot of people think of the military, they think of guys in uniforms with rifles shooting at people.
Yeah.
I don't think they realize that these men most of the time are not doing that.
Right.
That they're getting qualifications or getting training. They want to make sure they're getting promoted. They want to make sure that, if they leave, they can do it honorably and all that. So what you're telling me is that you're part of that group that helps connect them to the career side of the military, not just the warfighting side.
Correct.
Which is important because most of the time when you're in the military, I presume, you're doing the career side stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's a lot like a corporation then.
And then guys wanting to get promoted, like if I was interviewing a Marine that's been in a little while, checking to see if he's PME complete, like has he been to sergeant's course, staff academy, has he done his PME, which is like professional military education, I believe. It might be a little off, but the point of it's the same. Like you get a stack of books that you got to do per rank. Like as you pick up rank, you get a stack of these. They're MCIs.
Really?
It's just and they have tests. You have to take tests on each one of them, but everybody gets stacks of these MCIs. Like,
wow. Is there a grade in the NCO level that's harder to get into than the others, or they just get progressively harder as you go?
That's going to depend on. They do get progressively harder as you go, but MOS will play a big part in that as well. Like riggers, parachute riggers, there's such a small MOS that a lot of their staff sergeants have been in like 16. They've been in a long time because they're closed up. They needed some of the guys that were senior master guns to get out and open up more room.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you could be stuck as, say, an E5 or an E6 longer because of your MOS than in another one. I did not know that.
Absolutely. And you can actually, so if you don't pick up, the Marine Corps is the Army doesn't do it. The Marine Corps, if you don't pick up E6 staff sergeant by 13 years, then you're out. You get separations pay.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's good. Grow or go.
Yeah. Okay. It sounds kind of like what happens here, competitive, right?
Yeah.
It happens here.
It sucks though having to tell. I mean, there's many times I had to tell Marines and they were on paper shit hot. This was later on at the infantry unit. At 2-1, a lot of these Marines were qualified extremely, and just needs of the Marine Corps, got to get out. That was when we came. See, we did a plus up to I think we were trying to get to 200,000 Marines, and then we were doing a drawdown after, and that drawdown things start to change a little bit on how retention works.
Yeah.
So the guy could be completely qualified, look good on paper, but they only have this many slots, and it's like magical chairs,
Yeah.
There's no seats left.
That's interesting. So you're on the Comstock, you're away from the Macon for a month. How do you get reunited with the unit you were a part of?
That is when it happened at a Liberty port. I got off with Gunny McGilton. We're supposed to be Liberty buddies, but I ended up no. I want to say Hong Kong. Did we go back to Hong Kong? I don't know. I just know for sure that it was at a Liberty port. I'm pretty sure it was Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so what did you do the rest of the time that you were with that unit in the service?
When I was
with the 1st Division?
Oh,
yeah.
Same thing. Career planning. Another big thing that come up was HIS packages. That's headquarters special duty screening assignment. So basically, the Marine Corps will come up with a list of all these sergeants, staff sergeants, gunnies, all this like 20, 30, 40 names. And basically they're saying they need to be voluntold to be screened for special duty assignment, whether it's drill instructor, recruiting, combat instructor duty, MSG, security guard, any one of those. But it's the Marine can volunteer to do it, but it's ultimately up to headquarters Marine Corps whether they want to do it or not. Like they could say, they could already had a plan, like this is what I want to do in my career, and I got my wife here, we get this house, and then they're gonna be like, no, you got recruiting orders.
Mm-hmm.
So those packages, which required the packages took a lot of work because the Marines have to get every tattoo taken pictures of and screened.
Hmm.
Even for retention, if tattoos were visible in PT gear, we had to take a picture of it and let headquarters Marine Corps see it to see if it was something derogatory.
No kidding.
Like one Marine had a FML, like fuck my life, tattooed on his forearm. And what he said when I had to explain what it said, he said fundamentals of Marine Corps leadership.
Did it work?
Right. That's not what that was, but
I didn't know that. So they need to make sure that they don't have anything that the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps is representing, like a Marine's representing the whole Corps
and the country.
And the country, yeah. So you can't have them out there with like Nazi ruins and stuff on their forearms and stuff.
And no neck or like wrist.
No kidding.
Even though the Army allows neck and wrist, though, it's weird.
Yeah, I didn't know any of the branches of services allowed that. That's interesting.
It's like some of the SF guys you end up seeing.
Yeah. And so, how long were you guys out to sea?
Total of we left in September, and we left in like July. Yeah, we left in June or July, and we got back in February.
Wow. So that next assignment that you did, where you deployed, was primarily being on these ships, staying sharp, trying to stay in shape, going to various ports of call, and just basically being a presence out there in case you were needed. Is that
Absolutely,
what it was?
Yeah.
That's incredible. So I had in my mind this idea that you guys were going to steam over to some place in the Middle East and deploy there for a while and come back. But your job was to just be there, to be ready.
Yep.
Huh.
That's what a Marine Expeditionary Unit does.
That's incredible.
So there's everywhere in the world, somewhere in the world right now, there's a MEU out.
That's really kind of comforting to know that we can very quickly bring a Marine battalion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Onto some shore as quickly as we need to.
Yeah.
I'll be damned. Okay. So what did you do for the remainder of that enlistment period after you were done with this deployment?
After I was done with this deployment, I got orders to Miramar, which is a little more south of Camp Pendleton, and was going to be the career planner for H&HS Squadron, which is a non-deployable billet.
Was an H what do
headquarters and service, headquarters and headquarters squadron.
Okay. Did you do that?
Yeah.
And what was that like?
A lot more Marines. I had two Marines working for me at this point, 2 sergeants working for me, so that took a lot of the stress away. but a lot more Marines overall, so just a bigger scale.
Mm. And were you staff sergeant at this time?
Yep.
Okay. And did you do that until your enlistment ended?
Yes, and during that time is when I had a lot of chaos, in my life. Like I hadn't dealt with like Chris's death.
Who's Chris?
Chris Goski, he was my roommate when I was at MARSOC. He was a JTAC. He shot himself in 2012.
I'm sorry to hear that. How common were those sorts of? How common was PTS in the military for you?
Up until I went to MARSOC, not very.
Yeah.
Like I'd seen it in the barracks. Like when I was at Pendleton, when I was at Supply McTissa, they had guys that were infantry in our same battalion, or in our same barracks. So I'd seen when the first Iraq stopped, and the guys come back and they gave them all these Ambien. These dudes started. Everybody was sleepwalking and doing crazy shit. Like those dudes had PTSD, you could tell. Yeah. And then when I got to MARSOC, when I met Chris, for sure, like Chris was crazy.
Did you, when you found out that he had committed suicide, were you shocked by that news?
Yeah, absolutely, because we had lived together in Wilmington, and this first incident that we had an incident with the police where the cops were called. Some rounds were put off outrange. Some rounds were let off, and the cops came, took his weapons. They let us go with everything, but the next weekend, what I did is what got us kicked out of the apartments. And basically I was on the porch drinking, and some little kid came up and was like pretending to shoot me. It's a little kid, and I just mimicked it back to him. And next thing you know, he comes back. I was just playing my game, and all I hear is bayonet range, mother. And Chris was outside with this whole mob of people. Like apparently these kids went and told their dads we had real guns. We pulled real guns.
Holy crap!
So this huge mob comes out, and Chris is all I hear was bayonet range, motherfucker.
Huh.
And these people were pissed. The apartment complex people kicked us out after that. And so Chris ended up having to move in with Tyler Van Hook, which is another operator that he deployed with. And I moved to the barracks because I was getting ready to deploy on that SOTF. So they let me stay in the barracks, which was cool because they didn't have to. And then that night that he did it, I was at Piggly Wiggly. It's a little grocery store they have there. And I ran into him, and he was trying to get me to go drink with him. And I lied to him and told him, like, no, I'm going to spend time with the kids. And that was actually a lie, too. I hooked up with this chick at the barracks. And the next morning, when someone came to the room and told me, because they knew that I was close with Chris, they told me that Chris had killed himself. And then this chick started laughing. I kicked her out of I made her walk. I made her walk all the way back.
Yeah. Why do you think she laughed?
I don't know if she thought it was like a prank or what. Yeah. I didn't even give it time though. I was pissed.
Yeah.
I kicked her out, made her walk back.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude. So are you saying that experience kind of stuck with you? Did it play some role in you leaving the Marine Corps when you in 2016, I should say?
Yeah, and because I ended up getting a pattern of misconduct. Multiple things. One, when I was this is around the same time, February, I think of 16. I had a pistol to my head. I was drinking a lot. My ex-wife was threatening to leave, and I had a negligent discharge. I've never had an ND in my entire life. Like I've always been, Marine Corps is super big on weapon safety.
Yeah.
And when I set the weapon down, boom, it went off.
Yeah.
And it ended up going into the neighbor's pillow.
Oh.
Who's an NCIS agent.
Oh my gosh.
What are the chances of that?
I know. It just sounds like the worst case. Wow.
Yeah.
So.
And then all that happened. I told the command about it, and they took the cops took the pistol, and they just said you should get a pistol like a weapons safety lock or something. That was basically what I got out of it. But what I didn't know is that guy was working a case. The NCIS guy was working a case to later arrest me. Like 6 months later, I got arrested. When I was at work, the sergeant major's like, hey, go talk to Gunny so-and-so. And I talked to him and he said, all right, just to let you know, U.S. Marshals are on their way at a $100,000 bond.
Wow.
For 2 counts of child cruelty because my stepson was there when it happened. So they charged me with that.
So what was the fallout from that?
They were actually going to let me stay. They were going to let me stay in the Marine Corps after that. But there was so much, and there's so much more to my story. My second book, I'm going to talk about all that. But there was so much going on with my ex-wife too. She had a standoff with the police. Yeah, there was a standoff with the police. Mike died. Chris's twin brother. He died from inhaling air duster. He used to just inhale that air dust off.
Yeah.
Like crazy, like cans. And he ended up dying in July 4th of 2016. And like all that kind of all happened at the same time. My ex-wife she ended up being pregnant, tried to kill herself with all these pills, and they tell her she's 2 weeks pregnant. Like, who tells you you're 2 weeks? No, it's usually like 4 weeks.
Right.
But no, she ended up being pregnant with my son I have now, and yeah, there was a lot going on with the commando. Like I was on restriction. I think the final straw that got me kicked out was I had been on restriction like 60 days, almost 60 days, like 53. I mean, you got to check in at 6 in the morning in camis. You can't change out of green on green uniform. I didn't have a vehicle at the time because my ex-wife was pregnant. They let her keep it out in Ramona, California. So I'm stuck on base. Anyways, I was almost done with my restriction, and I ended up drinking one night, and I didn't show up in the next morning. So when they sent the command to come get me, my wife was in the room.
Oh.
Yeah.
And she wasn't supposed to be?
Oh
boy.
And I threatened to kill the sergeant major and CO, like, apparently.
Oh my goodness.
So that's what did it.
You were drunk enough that you didn't remember that then?
I kind of remember part of it. And she said, I guess when they told her that, she said, no, he was probably just drunk. He always says that. And they were like, no, he said it again when he was sober. Like when I woke up at the hospital, I said it again to the gunny. I guess I told him, I threatened him. Yeah.
And so we were in the hospital because of the alcohol poisoning?
They gave me a 5150, yeah.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. And
homicidal, suicidal.
Okay. So you had to leave the Corps at this point.
This would ultimately be what got me kicked out, but it was a couple months before it processed out.
Okay.
And they basically gave me enough rope to hang myself with because I think there was one more incident where I got caught drinking, and then they just threw me in the brig.
Okay.
Until I got a separation in lieu of court-martial. Instead of court-martial, because I was carried with a 10, 15-year sentence.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
And when I was in the brig, I found this book called The Law. I found this book. It's called The Laws of Success by Napoleon Hill. Big old book, and in there it talked about if you write down what you want, that your definite chief aim. If you write it down, you look at it first thing in the morning and before you retire at night, and it can come true. Like there's nothing that's impossible. There's a guy named Victor Eitinge who actually. Not only did he have TB, but he was sentenced to life in prison, told him he'd never get out. Not only did he get out of prison, he didn't die from the TB like he should have, and he got out of the prison walls basically melted around him because of the impact that he made.
So let me see if I can understand this. 2016 is when you leave the Corps under not so optimal circumstances.
Correct.
You had ex-wives, you had suicides, you had drinking problems, you had mental health problems.
Yeah.
I'm sitting with here today. It's hard to believe that you were that guy. What did you do? What's the transition? I got 2 questions actually. One, you were very successful in the Marine Corps for a long time. until that happened. So my first question is, was it all these things that created a tipping point that caused you to crash?
Yeah,
And then how did you get out of that?
good question. It took a little while, some more struggle when I got out, for sure. Because then my drinking stopped, but I started doing drugs a lot. And then my wife and I had the most toxic relationship that's humanly possible. She was pregnant, 6 months pregnant. When I got out, they were promised that she would have medical care, which was a big thing because I don't know if I have health care. They said that she would be covered up until we had the baby, which wasn't true. I was living with my friend David in Denver, and then he ended up getting back with his wife, so we had nowhere to live. We lived in a tattoo shop here in Springs with my buddy that owned a tattoo shop with the baby. DHS got involved. DHS got involved, and then I ended up getting a charge in La Junta with my ex-wife, domestic violence. And those charges and all of that's kind of what put me on the path to get to where I got to today.
Was there a moment, was there an epiphany, or was it something that you had to grow out of?
I had to grow out of like lots of AA 12-step programs, and I'd say the biggest one was Sheridan, Wyoming. It's a veterans hospital in Wyoming.
Okay.
I went in November of 21, and it was just beautiful, magical place, like 8 weeks, PTSD and co-occurring. So if you have substance use and PTSD, they work on both of those together. And I just met some phenomenal people, my buddy Silent Crow, an Indian, and some other just really good vets. But I guess everything that happened there, healing, learn to talk about it instead of like not talking about it or deal with it, like processing emotions, processing all these things that happen, whether it's working out, doing some kind of talk therapy, or keeping an open mind about like different things the VA has. Like I heard they have like ketamine and different things that they're doing.
Because I think that's the part from this side of the table that I'm most pleasantly surprised by, is how it's like you're staring these things right in the eye. You seem to be able to talk about those things that went bad for you in an unflinching way. You don't sound like you're afraid of it. It sounds like you're kind of owning it. It sounds like that's probably important to get over these things, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Accountability.
So one of the things that we had a conversation about that led to this meeting here today is that you've had a chance to write a book.
Yes.
Recently, and based on what you just told me and how recently, relatively speaking, these things occurred, the fact that you wrote the book, it's called 10 Rules to Succeed Like a Marine, The Hard Price of Success, it seems all that more amazing to me. Was this therapeutic? Was this part of you overcoming some of those demons?
Absolutely.
So talk about the impetus for this book, why you decided to write it and what's in it.
Okay, thank you. So I've always, just like I knew I was always going to be a Marine, I always knew I was going to be a writer. I was thinking more so like horror, Stephen King type of stuff, but fiction's not really my thing yet. Yeah,
That's right.
But no, when I was at treatment, actually, probably a couple years, I've been doing these little sheets where I write down my goals and do all these things for a couple years now. And a couple years ago is when I wrote down I'll be an international best-selling author, et cetera, just for the same idea as what I had learned from that book in the brig, which I didn't finish telling you. Basically, I got a separation in lieu of court-martial instead of court-martial. I wrote that down. I got silk and 90% disability within 60 days, and both of those things happened.
Okay, interesting.
So I wrote it down. I always wrote down that I wanted to be an author. And when I was at treatment last year, I was taking college classes at the same time, doing all this stuff, walking everywhere, like doing above and beyond. Everybody's like, this kid doesn't stop. Yeah. And I just decided, I talked to Crow, and he was encouraging me to do it. And then I guess what the real final straw that allowed me to do it was this chick, Crystal, I'd worked with. She actually has a master's in creative writing. I had worked with her a year before. She had just gifted me a Chevy Blazer. I didn't have a vehicle for Christmas when I was at this treatment, and I was working with her this last year and talking to her at her house, and she showed me this book called Published. It's called Published, and it's about writing a book in 60 days. And I started to read it, and I was like, shit, I can do this. And that's what the final, like, I guess maybe it's because I was writing all those things down, all those things came to be, come into, like, meeting her.
So, what motivated you? What about the idea behind the 10 rules? Where did the 10 rules come from?
Okay, I would say mostly from everything I learned from personal development, the books I read, like The Slight Edge, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Think and Grow Rich, all these types of books. That whole success philosophy is where the 10 rules come from.
So can I talk a little about some of the things that I read in the book and get your comments on them? So first off, outside of some of the Marine Corps history that you share, which we already talked a little bit about, the Marine Corps started in a bar. There are some other ones in here that I thought, was interesting that you include in the book as well. You write just a small factoid about how successful Marines can be even after they leave active duty. The Fortune 500 companies, 163 of them, of the CEOs, are Marines. I didn't know that. So were you surprised by that?
No.
It doesn't sound like it, because it looks like you were looking and you end up finding a number. I mean, so why were you not surprised by that?
They had this, but there was a book that had gone around, and when I was a career planner, I mean, it had, it was like a list of famous Marines and all the things they've done. I think the guy from FedEx, Smith, I don't know if it's still obviously the same guy, but
was he a Marine, the guy who started FedEx?
I think he was one of the CEOs or something.
Yeah. That's interesting. And then you talk about what does success mean to you in chapter 1, and you write, however, as a recovering addict, single father, disabled combat veteran, and a man who'd completely lost his way, I consider myself extremely successful right now.
Amen.
Yeah. So I don't disagree with that, but what makes you feel successful?
Progress. Like if I'm being better today than I was yesterday, closer to my goals today than I was yesterday, just making some kind of progress is success to me.
You write in chapter 3 that, I know we've already mentioned this, but success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So to me, it seems like you've overcome a lot of difficulties with marital issues and substance abuse and career issues. So when you think of a progressive realization of a worthy ideal, where do you see yourself growing into next?
I think I want to keep, I have a couple of goals I was thinking about. One of the big goals that a friend of mine, he's another Marine veteran, we want to do is kind of create this safe haven for, I don't know if it'll be just male, but for veterans who kind of like Sheridan, but it's not going to be through the VA. It'll be a nonprofit. We could find a good space of land where we can teach them a trade, get them sober, teach them a trade, and teach them how to be a part of community again. Like there was actually a place for sale down in La Junta. I think it used to be the Boys Ranch for like $800,000. I don't know if it still is, but we were even thinking about some places like that. There's another place somewhere in Wyoming near Sheridan, like $2.2 million worth of land and the infrastructure, like the buildings to do that. So that's one of the dreams. Another one is to continue to write, see where that takes me.
Interesting.
My next book is going to be called Wake Up and Fight.
And what's that going to be about?
About the whole, basically the whole story, my whole life story, but breaking it down more into the nitty gritty, like going more into details about everything we just talked about.
All right. Like I said, I wasn't prepared for some of that when we had this conversation, and I think it's refreshing that you can talk about it as openly as you do.
Thank you.
You write that on chapter 3, that you use these daily worksheets. I think you may have brought one with you.
Yeah.
Could you talk about those?
Sure.
And could you maybe hold it up for the camera so they can see an example of that worksheet?
Yeah.
Okay, and could you flip it to the other side, please?
Yep.
Okay, so what are on these worksheets? How do you use them?
So on one side, I put my errands to do for the day, any calls I got to make, housekeeping, stuff like that. I got my exercise over here. And I don't fill it all out to the entirely, always. Try to do my best. On the flip side, that's when I write down the 5 things I'm grateful for. I learned that from my recovery. Just trying to keep that attitude of gratitude rather than complaining. You know what I mean? When you have an attitude of you're grateful for what you do have, you tend to get more of that. And then people to pray for listed over here on the top right. And then short-term and long-term requests. My goals are for short-term, and for long-term, I write those down every single day as well.
Is this a sheet that you created?
Yeah, I pulled it together out of 2. I made it out of some that I found online.
Right, but this is something that you put together for yourself.
Yes.
Okay, and how does this help you?
Helps me keep, because of PTSD and the TBI, I tend to forget things a lot. So it helps keep me organized, on track. And then the goals, obviously keeping those in front of me so I know I'm constantly working for it, so I'm not forgetting or getting stagnant.
One of the things I thought of when I read about the sheet that you put together and some elements of it is, to me, it also feels like it would reduce anxiety because you're writing out these sort of things that you want to accomplish. You can keep track of them. You can be reminded of things you might forget. Do you find that to be the case?
Yes. And even going through like these from a year or 2 ago, it's kind of phenomenal to see some of the things I wrote down, like being able to pay off $83,000 in child support debt. You know what I mean? Get custody of my kids back. I failed to mention in there I got hit by a semi too, but that was in there. That was 2020.
Okay, so that was, now this is the interview's taking place in January 2023. So you look very whole to me.
Yeah, I'm blessed.
Apparently, I mean, how did you get hit by a semi?
So I do lawn care on the side too, seasonal, aeration, overseeding, fertilizer, that just seasonal. And I was living in Canyon City. It was October of 2020. I think I was coming from doing some jobs in Springs or something. And I came back down to Highway 50 from the 115. Went to Highway 50. I was about 4 miles west, 4 miles east of Canyon City, heading west, and it's 2 lanes. You know what I mean? I was passing a semi. It was kind of going up this gradual grade. I was passing him and almost had overtaken him, and the last minute he just veered left, full blast, and like there's nothing. If I would have hit the brake, he would have hit me straight on. So I tried to speed up and go around, and I thought I made it, but last thing I remember, I mean, I had time to tuck and say a prayer, pretty much.
Oh my gosh.
And he just hit me and it spun this way and then rolled.
So, well, I mean, how badly injured were you?
Not.
No kidding. How do you, I'm just gonna be blunt. You leave the Corps in 16 under less than optimal circumstances. You have all of these things going on in your life that you have to deal with. You're talking about having a major wreck like this just 5 years after something like that happened, which isn't that long.
Right.
I mean, did you own the truck? Was it coming? How do you recover from something like that?
It was my own personal truck, so I had to borrow a van for my sister, and which at the time I wasn't still making all the right decisions. I ended up getting a DUI and that's what I'm on probation for now and finishing up. Wrecked her van, but I had to wait for the whole process of getting all the medical stuff you got to do, and I ended up getting a settlement. But that settlement was enough, $235,000, so it was enough to settle $83,000 in back child support. Which all that stuff when it happened in California and before I got kicked out, I didn't have anything in place. They were charging me $2,300 a month child support when I got out of the Marine Corps, making zero money. So that stacked up quickly.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? You can't pay anything.
Right.
So you were able to get out from underneath of that.
Yeah, paid it off.
Okay.
And then I bought 2 vehicles.
So where are you now with family and kids and all that?
So I got custody of my other 2 from the recent ex. I got custody of them. I do let her see them. And then my daughter McKenna, the oldest, she's 12. She just moved out here. She's with my sister now. But it's right down the street from me. But just because my brother's living with me and we don't have enough room for her yet.
Sure.
And we're just gonna try this semester out and see how it works out for her, because she wasn't doing too good out there.
So how do you feel about where you are right now?
Good. We're in a good place.
What do you think are some of the primary things that you were able to do? You've talked about some of these. If you could speak to the camera, to other vets out there, that I know there's probably thousands of them who are going through or have gone through the same thing you've gone through, what are you going to tell them? What message do you have for them?
Gotta find a why, a purpose. Basically, a reason to live.
Which I think is the first rule that you have in there, right?
A reason to get, and for me, that's even this safe haven, whatever, if me and Larry come up with that, or a purpose, even if it's a book, or helping vets, people in a similar situation. Kind of like how the whole 12-step program, AA and NA, they focus on helping another person. That same aspect, but just more so towards veterans.
You mentioned the VA earlier. Is the military, are they equipped through the VA to help people with these things? What are your thoughts on that? With these things being PTSD and or mental health issues.
Okay, good question. I would say at first I didn't think the VA was capable of doing that, but apparently they've come a long way from, I guess, the stigma that they used to have. I think it's just a matter of being your own advocate. That's what's important, is you have to be your own advocate. There's programs. There's not just Sheridan, there's other programs. Sheridan has 3 different programs there that all run concurrently at the same time as PCOD when I went. And there's that, I don't know, anybody who has gone, Larry was the one that told me about it, my Marine friend, and he had been so bad that they kept him there a year. He was pretty messed up when he got out. And he told me that place is phenomenal. And like that sold me on going.
How important is it to have people from the Corps that you know that you can talk to about this? Have you talked to people about this?
Yeah.
Okay, how important is that?
It's crucial.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, it's kind of like the whole, in order to keep it, you got to give it away type of thing. I feel like in order to keep making progress, I have to stay in tune, stay in touch with other people.
The reason I asked that is I interviewed an Army guy, Patrick Flynn, the guy who drove over bombs and got blown up. He ended up getting traumatic brain injury and had some like visible physical deformities from the nerve damage. And he had what he called battle buddies. I don't know if the Marine has
Army.
That. That's Army.
Same thing though.
It's the same thing that he still contacts with a lot to this day. And he mentioned that, this is related to your book, I think. He mentioned that one of the reasons why he started the business with the barbecue spices to not just make money, but it has a military theme. He donates a lot of profits to military organizations. That is also good for his mental health. Is this book and some of these programs is good for your mental health as well?
Absolutely. I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I'm finding out as I'm working on my second book now, as I'm writing all that and like reliving it, but writing it out is reliving it in a whole different process. Like it's hard to break all that down. It's a lengthy process, like typing an hour a day. So it is kind of like a therapy. That's what I'm finding. And I don't know how it'll all be when that book's all said and done, but I'm excited.
So that's all the questions that I have. What I like to do at the end of the interview is just have some time. Is there anything that you want to share with me that we haven't talked about?
Not that I know.
So when you think back at your time, I have one more question, I guess, in the Marine Corps and the ups and downs that you had, you know, what sticks out the most? What do you think, what are the strongest memories about your time in the Marine Corps?
The people. Yeah. Just that. A unique group of people that, like, I talked about it with my friend Larry too. Like, you can, a Marine will stop to say hi to another Marine. Like, he just dude is wearing a Marine sweater, and he pulled by in a semi and like drove the semi in the Walmart parking lot, like right by him, just to say, "Semper Fi, Marine." You know what I'm saying? Like, just the caliber of people and the people that are willing to do whatever it takes, even if it means their own death, to make sure you're okay.
Do you think the values you learned in the Marine Corps played some role in you being able to recover from some of the difficulties you faced?
All of it.
All of it. And that's why the book is titled How to Succeed Like a Marine.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have, Henry.
Cool.
I really appreciate you driving out here.
Thank you.
And sharing your story with me. I'm not going to lie to you. It wasn't the story I thought I was going to hear. I thought that you were going to tell me that you had this meticulous Marine Corps experience, and then you got out of the Corps and decided to take some of that information and share it into a book. What I did not appreciate are the difficulties that you faced for quite a while, with friends committing suicide, with ex-wives, with kids, with child support, with substance abuse.
Yeah.
You know, that's quite a hill to climb.
Yes. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. I hope having an interview like this is going to be also part of your path to recovery. Do you feel a little better every time you talk about it?
Yeah.
Good. Good. I'm so glad that we as a society have gotten away from what the World War I, World War II generation were told, which is to keep it inside and never talk about their experiences. I can't tell you how many World War II veterans I spoke to, interviewing them, suffered with post-traumatic stress their entire lives and didn't get help from the VA until their 70s or 80s. And to a man, they said they wish they had done it earlier. So I applaud you for figuring that out now. I can't imagine where you'd be if you had to wait till you're 70 to have some of the realizations that you've had back in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20.
I don't think I'd be here.
I don't think you would be. I think you'd be dead. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna cut tape.